Welcome back to part 2 of our conversation with Tim Delisle of Datalog. We have a great conversation, so stay tuned.
Because the three things that Chris and I are looking for in these startups, and Chris says this all the time, but the three things that we're looking for is the people that find the company, the idea, and the third one is that sales and marketing piece. And that's where we see most of the companies fail. And it's unfortunate because the company can build a great technology, but if the customer doesn't understand the message, it's really difficult to sell it, right?
Oh, sure.
And especially taking something so complicated and to sell it simply, or to sell something that is simple, right? It's so simple that it's hard to sell. There's a lot of
simple is hard.
Simple is hard, And so I don't know. So in general, I really appreciate what you're saying about that, because I think sometimes people are like, well, if I have a great product, then anyone can sell it. I don't know about that, because sometimes you have a sales guy, though, just put customers off day one, right? They haven't even really gotten a chance to even touch the technology and they're already turned off,
I totally agree with that. And I think there's another component here, which is the greatest salespeople know when to step away and when to back off and be like, hey, my chemistry with this one person is just not there.
Yeah.
Right. Like, and there's just people who like just hate being sold to, and like who don't really understand the underlying sales. And I love that we were talking.
Well, it's because like salespeople, we're so sensitive. When somebody doesn't like me, I'm like, why doesn't he like me? Like, did I do something? Yeah. Did I say something? Like, I'm a nice guy. Why? And I'll get pissed off, right? Like, I don't get it.
Yeah, and what we found is just like, hey, sales is a team sport, right? Like, I'm there to support the guys, and like, if they need me on a call, then they need me on the call, right? Like, and I expect them to like be conscious of pulling in executive time for these calls and like to understand, be able to justify it and all that stuff. Yeah. But at the end of the day, I'm there to help. And if this person's like, hey, I need a founder to come in and have that conversation, they bring me in, they bring a co-founder in, and it's totally, totally cool.
And that's the fun part, because while you guys are small, you will give me and Chris the time of day too. But then one day you're gonna be past Series A, B, and C. You're gonna be a big boy, and then you're gonna be like, oh yeah, those two guys I did a podcast with back in the day. Yeah,
those are good times. But now we're on to the next thing.
These are relationships. There's always the next things and all that stuff.
Totally. It's so fun. That is the best part. But,
and we love watching companies, go from, a small handful of people to, the big leagues. It's cool to watch that happen.
It's really cool.
And I think what we've learned is like the way that you move forward as a team and the culture and the people, like that's the central theme always. And the ability to build a great team and be able to have honest, hard conversations with everyone is really it's the thing that I think has saved us multiple times from just crashing and burning, is just coming together and just having these come to Jesus moments of like, totally, this isn't working right now. We got to do things a little bit differently. And we've had those conversations with our customers. We've had those conversations with the internal team. And every time that we've had those very honest conversations, things lead for the best. And absolutely. I think now the data proves it so far. It's just like we've been able to incrementally grow. It hasn't been always as fast as we wanted. It's been very much, I like to talk about entrepreneurship as like, it's a sinusoidal wave that you hope is trending up. And that's like, that's what it is on a day-to-day basis. So coming together, having a great team, and really, I think sales is one of those things that a lot of technical founders don't have an appreciation for. Yeah. And I think I was lucky enough that back in my undergrad days, I was a wakeboarding bum. And I was like, what is the easiest thing for me to be close to the boat and be able to go throw some backflips here and there? And the best way to do that was just to go sell bread at a bakery. So I learned sales the hard way of just like, it's actually really hard to work. And then when it came down to selling software, it was just like, wow, like these guys are pros. I'm going to need to do everything that I can to enable them and figure out how to do this myself. So it's been a cool journey.
That's awesome. So let's get back to data, because you were just talking about the data trending up. Do you feel like companies are making good decisions with their data? I mean, do you think that people are getting the value out of their data right now? I mean, I keep hearing people talk about data scientists, but they don't really have data scientists half the time when they're talking about that.
So I think people are doing what they need to be doing with data because they inherently don't trust it. And I think people don't yet see the iterative nature of data.
Yeah.
So we worked with a customer, did some really interesting insights. Like we just delivered data from like 230-ish thousand different data sources for them into the centralized time series database. They use a company called TimescaleDB, like super cool time series analysis database, Postgres extension. It's open source. Like these guys really, really loved that particular tool and being able to derive insights from it. And in this process, this team derived insights for dashboard, and they ended up kind of putting together a dashboard that was then used to do reports to regulatory entities. And unfortunately, they got the data wrong, right? Which is there was a query somewhere where the logic wasn't correct. And these types of mistakes happen all the time when you're analyzing data. And at the end of the day, that team got dinged left and right and now has to go through these incredibly stringent processes to be able to justify every little thing that they do with data. Mm-hmm. And I actually think that is the wrong way to deal with these types of mistakes, right? In the same way that we release products and there's a bug, we go out, we fix it. I think the culture around data needs to change to be, hey, it needs to be iterative. We are going to make mistakes, but at the end of the day, the way that we fix those mistakes is we reduce our time to market. We ship, and we find those underlying bugs. And you find those bugs when the subject matter experts are like describe it or using the data, which means is you usually hand it off across the value chain from like I built the product to now you're the user of the product and you're giving me feedback on it. And I think we're not there yet from a cultural standpoint with data, which is I think today we ding people for mistakes in the data in a way where it's unhelpful, in a way where folks start locking down their data-driven initiatives and start being fearful of driving data-driven change or data-driven decisions. And what we need to get to as organizations is we need to get to a state where those types of mistakes are acknowledged. We learn from them, and that's the important piece. But we don't end up building like this crazy freaking process where like check all the boxes, do all these things, when at the end of the day, simple logic mistake, it happens when we build products all the time. It's an edge case. We need to learn from it, try to prevent it from happening in the future, document it, and move on. Yeah. If organizations and leadership start dinging people left and right for small mistakes, yes, these small mistakes can have big impacts, but the same thing is true with code that we ship every day. Yeah. Right? Like your Facebook, you could take down Facebook, ship the wrong thing, take out the entire ad engine and cost billions of dollars in like a few lines of code. So like that's where we need to, I think, grow and mature as organizations. Is we want to get to, I think Mark Zuckerberg calls it now like ship fast with stable infrastructure, right? It's not ship fast and break things anymore. Yeah. It's like build the underlying infrastructure to be able to ship fast and then allow your people to iterate on it and learn. And learning ends up happening when it touches the end user and the customer, not when it's inside the four walls of the organization. Yeah, I mean, that's definitely a trend that we've been seeing sort of spreading throughout technology. You know, it's sort of that agile development model of, iterative processes and things like that. And I think it goes way beyond
just technology too. I think, my kids are in a Montessori program, and they have on the board, this is a mistake making place. I mean, if you're not making mistakes, you're not moving forward. You're not trying things. You don't want to make them, in great amounts, but you have to be having the freedom to move forward and iterate. I think that's an important point.
Yeah, and I think the thing that people tend to miss on that front is you have to be very conscious of your environment, right? So for us, as an early stage company that really focuses on the enterprise market, right? Like, we play with the biggest in the world. Our like target market segment is probably Fortune 1000 or like Global 2000. And what we end up having very few shots on goal to make mistakes. Mm-hmm. What do? We build internal environments to train and like figure out what it's like and like try to catch our mistakes before they get out the door.
Yeah.
But we still try and true, like the litmus test for, is this thing valuable? It's shipping.
Yeah.
Get it out the door, get feedback. And so you have to build those environments where if you don't have too many shots on goal, like, you're going to have to be somewhat careful on what you're shipping out. You might take a little bit more time, but like, you still have to not ding for the underlying mistakes and move the ball forward and actively learn and get that done. I think that's been a transition for me as a CEO. Is like, you learn that you can make mistakes quite a bit. And I think as a first-time founder, that was something that was very much a learning experience for me.
So you talk about building the infrastructure. I think this is a good time to start talking about data process automation and data ops. And, that's sort of where Datalog, fits right in. Can you tell me, just what is data process automation and data ops, and how does Datalog address that issue?
Yeah, so I think data process automation and data ops are starting to be very different things. And data ops, I think, if we had talked about this like a year ago, was very amorphous, and these days is very, very much akin to DevOps, right? Mm-hmm. It's methodologies and practices and best practices that you're going to be using in your data to be able to kind of go from like, I have someone who needs to design a data intensive application to it's shipped and it's readily available and standardized. So I would say that's one bucket. And obviously, by being data process automation, which is a tool that data ops professionals could use to execute on their projects, like, we have some play into both of those ecosystems. I would also qualify data ops these days as like the DevOps movement around monitoring of applications and all of those spaces. I think these days there very much are these data ops platform that will allow you to monitor the state of your jobs and all of these interlinked dependencies there. So, cool category. I would say data process automation is very much where we fit in. And the way to think about that is companies have invested an insane amount of money in the self-service toolkit, right? Invest in the data warehouse. You might be like investing in the hot new thing, the Snowflakes of the world. You've got these data warehouses that can scale and finally accommodate insane volumes of semi-structured and structured data that you can run performant queries off of. So that's one category of self-service tools that we ended up investing in. Then we invested, and by we, I mean all these enterprises, not me. Then we invested in, I'm Canadian, so there's the royal we there. And then we invested in this data wrangling category, which is, right, I'm executing on a project, and I need to very effectively curate that data to be perfect for my project. In machine learning, there's another category of tools like feature engineering tools where you're designing your features for your machine learning project. And that tends to be pretty standard to the project itself. That's another category. And then we've got the BI, machine learning, self-service, AI platforms. And now we're seeing a new category of interesting data-driven tools, which is automation data-driven tools. And we're starting to see people, now it's still in scripting land, but it seems like products are starting to rise in that category. So we've got these four buckets: the data warehouse, the data wrangling tools, and kind of the analytics stack that we invested in. And there's this category, which is upstream of all of that, which is getting data into that centralized self-service ecosystem. I'm being loose with the term data warehouse. It could be a data lake. It could be like so many different things, but essentially data, a place where you're going to analyze data.
Yeah.
So there's this upstream category that right now is dominated by the Informaticas and the TIBCOs of the world. And like, quite honestly, we'd love to pick on them for just being dinosaurs that aren't really innovating all that much in these categories. They've gotten to a state where the way they win is by generating an enormous portfolio of products, but the individual products in those categories of portfolios, like all individually, are subpar. Like there's too much going on in that space. And so we think that space is ripe for now this self-service category, which is ETL and ELT automated enough for a business person to be able to grab data and put it into their self-service toolkit. And that's really the category that we play in. Mm-hmm. We're calling that data processing automation because at the end of the day, what ETL and ELT and all of those keywords are is you're processing the data and trying to get it into the place where you're going to analyze it. And we use the word automation very carefully here because there's grunt work that's associated with that category. Mm-hmm. Like schema mapping is still one of those things that everyone needs to do. And so we're bringing automation technologies to that grunt work. Like machine learning can infer what the class is going to be. We can figure out and suggest what type of schema you should use for this particular data structure, et cetera, et cetera. So there's a bunch of grunt work that needs to be automated in that category. So think of us as new school ETL, ELT platforms that are super easy to use by a data consumer that's using the self-service toolkit, and where automation is a core component to make that not be work that you absolutely dread and hate. And that's really kind of where we play. And I believe the infrastructure that you need to optimize time to market is that entire value chain being self-service.
Yeah.
To go from raw data to insights, you need to democratize that access. And that's really where Datalog stands and where we're putting our stake in the ground is this upstream category of ETL and ELT just hasn't gotten innovation. We've seen a few players arise in the startup land that are simplifying this process, but so few players that are truly fundamentally enterprise ready and ready to handle the big boys there.
Yeah, I could see tremendous value in. I mean, not only just helping to deliver the data to the end user and the people who can make the most use of the data, but by automating so much of that grunt work, as you say, the time to market for that and the business agility that you could get out of that, I could see tremendous value out of that.
Yeah, the analogy I like to use is the way McDonald's quote unquote manufactures French fries, right? Like
I saw your speech on that
system, right? The potato is always, always, always in motion. It never stops. And then the next component that I want you to focus on is the automation, okay? And those are going to be apparent as we go through. As you can see, there's a freaking potato cannon that is cutting French fries.
Yeah. In order to get the freshest French fry, right? There's two components. There's what happens in the franchise.
Yeah.
Like the end McDonald's where you go and like maybe you order in these days, you don't go to the actual franchise.
Yeah.
But you go there and what you want is the freshest, best French fry for whatever Big Mac or whatever that you're going to be consuming with it, right? And then there's all the stuff that happens to get to a fresh French fry, which is all the back office work, all the grunt work, which goes into slicing and dicing the potato and like pre-frying it, freezing it to make it really reliable to actually generate a good French fry at the end of the day. So we think of ourselves and like that value chain for data is essentially the same thing. There's the upstream back office stuff, which ends up happening a lot in the ETL, ELT category. In the data warehouse, like that's the repeatable, every project needs these things type of thing. And then there's the stuff that happens in the franchise, which is the individual projects in this analogy, which is the data wrangling tools, the machine learning capabilities, the Power BIs of the world and all that stuff on the BI front. And that's really kind of the scale versus individual project type of ROI that you're going to see. And as someone who's architecting these systems, you have to think, okay, like, do I want individual projects to have to standardize dates every time they consume a date? Like, the answer is hell no. Like,
Yeah.
I want that stuff to be done for them so they don't have to even write a single line of code. That should be work that's already automated.
Yeah, that's sort of like the potato gun that cuts all the fries into little pieces.
Yeah.
You guys, we got to stop talking about French fries. This is I mean, French fries is my Achilles heel, man. And McDonald's.
So that's just like, I only eat hand cut, like curated fries.
Oh, I love when you get the French fries and like it's steaming hot, right? It's in the bag, and you're going home, and the whole time I'm like, don't eat it, don't eat it, don't eat it. You know, it's impossible. It's impossible. They're so warm, and the salt sticks. So Tim, from a sales perspective, who is your target audience? Where, if you're calling into a customer, who are you trying to call on? What titles? What's the goal there?
Yeah, so that's an interesting question, and it's one that I think we're still trying to answer as an organization. Like that's a hard problem, and part of why it's hard is related to what I talked about in the early part of the show, which is the democratization of data. Right? Nowadays, what we are looking for is people who have incredible ideas for what they could do and how they could impact their business with data. Like, those are the best people to talk to. And unfortunately, like, very senior executives don't always know who those people are in their organizations, right? Like, the person I want to talk to is the guy or gal who like understands fundamentally how to improve the process by leveraging data. And that changes based off the industry, right? And what we found is when you look at an industry, you look at what's bread and butter. So in telcos, the bread and butter function is like network operations. So we're calling on who is data literate in your network operations BU, and we want to talk to them. In manufacturers, the bread and butter operation is the supply chain, right? Like, those guys at the end of the day understand true how to get things out the door. So the supply chain is really important. The manufacturing operations is really important. The sales and marketing operations is really important. So anyone who's data literate within those different functions that are bread and butter and quite mature within these organizations are people we're calling upon. Now, to find them, we're starting to find success in calling into CIOs and heads of data warehousing technologies, because they tend to know who's data literate. We're also starting to think through how much finance knows who's data literate within the organization. What you find is the finance department knows who's reporting their data really well and how to chop headcount. But unfortunately, you need to know exactly who in finance is like savvy enough to get there. And that tends to be the guy who wants to be the next CFO, or the gal that wants to be the next CFO. Those folks understand that data is king, and that in order to get access to like money generating insights, they need to talk to data literate BUs. So, because the short answer is, right now, the people we're trying to find within these organizations are data literate business people who understand the value of data and the impact on their business. That tends to be related to a bread and butter function in a particular industry. And we're hoping to hone in on a set of standard titles. So far, what I've done is just have conversations with super senior executives who can point me and route me in their organizations to the right people. So I talk to CIOs multiple times a week. I talk to EVPs of particular business units a lot. And then they tend to know, okay, this is my person, this is my person, this is my person. And they route us in those places.
So Tim, I know, it hasn't been announced yet, but, the word on the street is you've raised a $12 million Series A. Yeah. So what's next for Datalog? So
what's interesting is we're leveraging that capital to really hone the product market fit, right? And we talked early on the importance of sales and marketing. And what I think we've gone through is a series of iterations of not really having our messaging and our problem statements be really tight, where every time we tried to kind of turn it up a little bit, turn up the dial a little bit on the scaling factors without having that underlying foundation, like we just like, it feels like we're trudging through the mud. So what we've been doing is we've been going back to basics, honing in our messaging, really figuring out, instead of going out and scaling the sales team and doing all this work, went back to basics, had a whole bunch of conversations, whole bunch of feedback sessions, and now we feel extremely confident in our ability to start scaling the business. And we're going through like a quick checking that all the nuts and bolts are actually in place, and we've got the solid foundation there. And we're essentially going to be using that capital to grow out the team significantly. So there's going to be two axes for growth. One is product and engineering, which is going to gear up. Now we understand a lot of, I call my first enterprise customers lovingly my meat grinders. So we've been dragged through the mud, like beaten, scarred, everything with these large enterprises. And we understand now what we need to build and why. So product and engineering is going to scale pretty linearly there and keep executing on that roadmap. But next stop for us is really going to start bringing in more salespeople. Now we've got 2 incredible reps. We're going to be kind of learning from their experience out in the field, getting them closing a few deals, and then scaling out to kind of probably the next wave of sales hires, probably going to scale in 2s, and then slowly get up to a state where we're confident enough for Series B and just turning the dial to 11 on growth.
That's awesome, and you guys seem like a really fun, cool company, and so I gotta imagine, speaking of the meat grinder, you probably want some more POCs, and you want more folks to take a look at what you got and give feedback. If people wanted to take a look at your product and POC it, where should they go?
I think reaching out to me directly, Tim at datalog.io. That's Datalog spelt the French way with GUE. So I'm sure you.
Well, you're Canadian.
So really reaching out to us through, like, just reaching out directly to me. I can have those conversations. You can go to our website, sign up for demos. That's always something that we monitor. And really, we're looking to have these really awesome, honest conversations, get a bunch of feedback on our messaging, our positioning, on our product in general. So, like, come about it not in a way where it's a vendor customer relationship. Like, we're still very early stage. We can learn, we can move, we can change things around. So that's really where the types of conversations we want to be having. And at the end of the day, we're asking for people who really want to have a meaningful impact within their organizations with data. They want to get access to it. They want to be able to self-serve. Like, let's have those conversations. Let's get you guys to value. And then we can think about commercials from there. And then you mentioned one thing. We seem to be like a fun organization. Doesn't matter how fun I am. We work really damn hard. Like, these 4 meat grinders. So the other side of the house is, if you want a job, we're always an incredible place to work at. But that being said, we work really, really, really hard. If you want a 9-to-5 gig and like fun loving, everything's always happy daddy, like, that is not us. You guys know our customer list, and like, you do not close those customers without working the extra miles and without getting there. Like, we're 30 people and we're servicing some of the world's largest companies.
Yeah, you definitely are. Definitely some big ones on that list.
Yeah, exactly. We put in extra cycles here, and it's really, really important that people who come to this wanting to be a part of this, to understand we work really hard. The team that is here has grinded through this process so far. And if you're looking to join, you're going to be joining an incredible team. It is fun, but we work really hard at the same time.
Yeah. That's awesome.
So Tim, I just want to say one thing that I really appreciate you saying is getting early customers and then you listening to them, I think is really, really important, because we've had some founders where it's like, I don't understand why they don't get it.
These customers are idiots.
Well, yeah, these guys just don't get it. Yeah, they're idiots. It's like, well, I don't know. I think we should listen to them, and we should really try to understand what is the gap and what is it. So, hey, man, kudos to you. I think that's going to really help you.
Yeah, they are the ones with the problems and the money. So, that seems like a good source to listen to.
Funny how that
works. Special breed of listening, I think. Like, you need to understand how to listen, because what they say is typically not what they intend. So, like, you actually need to learn how to listen, because like, if you listen to what they say, you're typically going to be making the wrong decision. if you instead listen to what they mean, that's usually where you're going to find some really incredible nuggets of information. And I think we learned that the real hard way of like, we in the early days probably weren't listening to what they meant, and we're listening to what they were saying a little bit too much.
Well, Tim, I got to say, you're a compelling, dynamic leader, and I think you guys are going to do incredible things, and I think you're going to have a really incredible business, and I can't wait to see you guys grow. And I really, really appreciate you being on, and we'll have to come back and do it some more later, because I think we should, like you said, have that leadership discussion, as a separate podcast, maybe, because I think you got a lot of good insights there. So thanks for coming on. I appreciate it.
Thanks, guys. Really, really enjoyed the conversation.
Thanks for watching. If you like what you saw, hit like, click on that subscribe button. That helps a tremendous amount. And click on that bell icon if you want to get notified when we post more content. And we'll see you in the next video.